Hi, everybody. It's Joe Cioffi here on a Saturday night, 9:30 Eastern Time, Saturday, February 24th, 2018. Hope everybody's having a great weekend. I see Anthony Orr is on. I don't know about taking off tomorrow. We'll see. But I appreciate it. Thank you. Delvin, Daniello, 99 Wolves is here. Sliced, diced, and repriced. Yeah, you know what? I just noticed, by the way, the tornado warning that is up for Clarksville, Tennessee. There's a lot of severe weather. I'm going to jump onto the radar in just a second. Timothy Veltman, good to see you. Hi, Gordon Mayer, James NASCAR fan, Sean Bayer. So good to see you guys all here. Let me go right to, I got 3 radar views up here. So I'm going to start with, we'll start with the one in the lower Mississippi Valley. And it's pretty busy. And you can see that there's this snaking line of severe thunderstorms that are occurring across western Kentucky and throughout much of western Tennessee. And you can see that extends down into northern Mississippi. This is part of this whole weather system, this storm that's bringing a lot of rain and snows up into the upper Midwest. We have numerous warnings up, by the way, in a lot of these areas, not just for severe thunderstorms, but also for flooding, which has occurred from some of the heavier rainfall. Here's a view from the Ohio, from the northern part. So we're going to go up to, let me just bring this up here, the Ohio Valley radar. And you can see here, here's the northern part of that line moving up through western Tennessee and snaking up through western Kentucky and even into parts of southern Indiana. There's some very heavy rains up in through central Indiana and parts of southwestern Ohio, north central Kentucky. That is moving northeastward, and go north and west up into southern Wisconsin and northwestern Illinois. That's rain, but you get into the colder air in northwestern Wisconsin and back through Minnesota. That is in the form of snow. Now, in my neck of the woods, as we take a look at the northeast, and we'll bring the northeast up in full view here. Not too much going on. There's a frontal boundary that is forming across the Delmarva Peninsula. Bit of warm frontal action here with some showers in parts of the Hudson Valley and moving southeastward over parts of Long Island and offshore. Really not too much there. You've got some heavier showers starting to develop across northern Virginia and West Virginia and eastern Ohio. So that when that complex shifts eastward, that rain is going to get into my area of the Northeast overnight and during the first part of Sunday into Sunday afternoon. So this is quite the weather system that is moving along and progressing. We'll show you what all the warnings and various advisories and warnings that are up and watches as well. We'll bring up the Weather Service's national map here. And here we go. So you can see this whole area of the red, all the counties that are in flash flood flash flood warnings up for southeastern Missouri, western Tennessee. That little red area, that bright red dot there, that is the county where Clarksville, Tennessee, that's under a tornado warning at the moment. We have also flash flood warnings up for a number of areas across southern Indiana into southwest Ohio, western Tennessee, southeastern Arkansas, a little bit of peppering there up in north central Arkansas, and also into northwestern Mississippi. Winter storm warnings up for a good chunk of eastern Minnesota and northwestern Wisconsin and the extreme western part of the upper peninsula of Michigan, with winter weather advisories just south of there, and also north and west of the winter storm warning area on up into getting into almost into northwestern Minnesota and parts of northeastern South Dakota and southeastern North Dakota. Out in the west, it's also busy. Winter weather advisories up from the mountains in Utah on up into Idaho. There's also an avalanche warning. I just noticed that in the bright blue here that you can see in central Idaho. More winter weather advisories along the Canadian border in northern Montana. There's a few counties with winter storm warnings up. We also have winter storm warnings up in a narrow band from just inland of the coast in western Washington, western Oregon. Then they kind of spread out in southern Oregon and into northern California. And we have various winter weather advisories up for northeastern California, northwestern Nevada, back up into Oregon. We've got a winter storm watch up for a few counties in north central California, and the dark purple there is a freeze watch. So a lot happening here tonight with this storm system that is heading up toward the Great Lakes. So we'll show you where we're going with all of this now, because we're setting up for this pattern change that is happening, and I want to set it up for you. Let me just find what I did. Okay, so here's the situation with regards to what's happening at the moment, and then I'm going to get into the big blocking pattern that's developing, and that's impacting weather in Europe and impacting weather here, of course, next week and beyond. Looks like there's going to be some kind of Noreaster type storm off the East Coast, but I want to say it right off the bat, folks. Don't equate the Noreaster necessarily with a heavy snowstorm for the coastal cities, okay? There might be some heavier snows up in the inland spots, but coastal cities, probably not, the way it looks right now. And we'll get into all of this, into how it plays. So we'll move this along. Let's come back to the present time. And let me make sure I got the right maps, which I want to get the rain and snow map up here. So here we go. We have low pressure in northeastern Missouri on the GFS. This is for 1 a.m. So the low goes pretty rapidly up into Wisconsin, into northeastern Wisconsin. You can see how the GFS has its heavy snow area outlined in the darker blues across much of northwestern Wisconsin, and even the western part of the state as you go south. Looks like it wants to change it over. That snow extends on up through into Minnesota. The severe weather tonight is probably going to continue across much of southern Illinois, the southern half of Indiana, and through a good chunk of western Ohio. You see that in the yellow and the brown and reds, the GFS's way of indicating some very heavy rainfalls and the potential for severe weather. Also extending down into eastern Arkansas, western Tennessee. So that continues at least into the early morning hours. And then you start to translate this over to the east as a weather front begins its approach. The rain tomorrow morning across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, on through much of southern New England. On the northern fringe of that, some freezing rain and snow. And then you've got snow going on back west of the deep low center that's over getting ready to move over into Lake Superior. Across much of Wisconsin and even over into western Michigan. Looks like a little bit of snow going on there. Probably some lake effect with that west wind, and some back edge snows up into northeastern Minnesota. The low moves up into Canada. The front moves on through, and then weather conditions start to improve as we move into early next week. There's some rain, by the way, that moves across. Just to back it up a little bit here, looks like the threat for severe weather kind of weakens as we go through Sunday, as the weather front pushes up into the Carolinas, and then you get a little bit of a ripple of a wave action on the old front that has rain into the southeast part of the United States into the first part of Monday. And then when we get into Tuesday and Wednesday, it looks pretty quiet. So let me set up what's going on with respect to this block, okay? So we're going to have a system that's going to come out of the west. And here's the GFS upper air. So I have everything kind of outlined here for you so you can see better what it all means. This is for Thursday of next week. You have this strong blocking high that at that point is over Greenland. This is a very, very powerful feature. It, by some measures, could very well wind up being, one of the strongest blocks that we've seen at this time of year. You can see how the jet stream is displaced way to the south, and you've got energy that's going to be moving eastward. Now, there's a natural tendency for the energy to try to lift up northeastward toward the Great Lakes. And in fact, there's a little bit of a ridge that's along the east coast. And one of the reasons for that is that the blocking high has not, at this point, pressed far enough south to suppress that ridge and to force that upper air system that's back over through Iowa, where I have, say, energy heads east and the red line there indicating where the trough is. That block is eventually going to suppress that system and keep it from lifting northeast. The problem is, the forecast problem is when, if the block exercises its power a bit sooner and a bit stronger, the low will wind up getting suppressed further south sooner and wind up in a position off the east coast further south than what's being modeled at the moment. If, on the other hand, it takes a little bit longer, then you're going to wind up having this system try to go to the Great Lakes and eventually weaken, because ultimately the block's going to win this battle, and low pressure is going to redevelop along the east coast. The thing is, if that happens in that sequence where the block takes what the model is forecasting to take in terms of time, then that coastal development is going to wind up taking place a bit further to the north. That basically means a warmer atmosphere in the east, and that's what all three major models. The European was probably the last one of the bunch to join the party, which it did today, and we're at a point now. Well, if it's going to be different, all the models are going to have something's going to have to show up now in the next day or so on the models to indicate that the development is going to be further south, as it was shown a few days ago by some models. All of the models, I think, at one point or another did show that. But here's how it plays out. Now, here's your surface look. Here's the next low for later next week. And you can see it there in Oklahoma, northeast Texas, Oklahoma, moving northeastward, okay? Now into northeastern Kansas. As we get into Thursday morning, it's moving into southeastern Iowa, western Illinois. There is a high that's off the map that's up to the north in northeastern Canada, beginning to press down. So this low is trying to go to the lakes. At some point, as the block asserts itself, that low is going to just die out, and a new low is going to develop to the east. There's a long occluded front here from the low center, and you're probably getting at this point very large pressure falls in eastern Virginia and over the Delmarva Peninsula. So there's probably going to be some kind of low developing there. And here it is. This is Thursday evening. The low is practically in southern Michigan. That primary is way to the north, okay? You would need, if this is going to be a snow event for a lot of the areas in the northeast, you really want that primary low. At the very least, you want it down near Cincinnati or southern Indiana, somewhere in there, because that would be that would happen as the high to the north is suppressing south, and you would get cold air draining down from eastern Canada and through New England. But the models are saying that the block is going to really flex its muscles a little too late for this particular low, so that when we go into Friday, there's your new low center sitting right over Long Island. That's a fairly deep low, a 987 millibar low, but it's way to the north at this point. That's going to be good for heavy snows for probably New Hampshire, Vermont, and upstate New York. And eventually, by the way, as we go into the late week, as the block really starts to press down through northeastern Canada, that surface low is going to start dropping southward. So it's going to be a little bit unusual. There's a little low center east of the Jersey coast, south of Long Island. You can see there's another low that tries to form out to the east. And the whole complex kind of shifts east and south over time as there it is. You see how it drops almost southeastward. That doesn't happen too often. But this is where, again, that blocking high at this point is now really pushing down. The system can't move up to the northeast like they normally would in a west to east jet stream. So instead, it's forced south and east. So this will produce some nor'easter conditions here. And the thing is, you have a full moon this weekend coming up at the end of this coming week. So regardless, you're going to have higher than normal tides and the risk for coastal flooding from coastal New England on southward with this sort of scenario. We'll get some rain. We'll probably get some wind. I don't know if it'll be anything to write home about. But the only place that wind up in snow with this will be in areas well north and west of the coastal areas. And then, of course, the low continues to drop southeastward out in the Atlantic Ocean and goes out. I mean, this is really a powerful block to see lows drop. Instead of moving, at this point, even under a blocking pattern, they might move east or translate east-northeast, something along those lines. But this block is so strong that it wants to drop this storm almost south-southeast. Now, the presence of that block is going to be there for a while. So there's another system that comes in going into now the week of March 5th, Monday, March 5th. And right around that 6th, 7th, 8th time, 6th, 7th date, models are keying on another coastal low of some kind. And I've been saying that might be the better date frame of time where you might have a chance for something to happen in terms of snow for the coastal areas and for areas down in southern New England and southeastern Pennsylvania and so on, and eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey. And the reason why I say this is because after this first thing goes by and that high's pressing down, you're going to have some cold air. We're not talking about the cold air like we had back in December and January. That kind of cold air is playing out in Europe, whereas the Siberian air is getting involved. We're going to have to do it with whatever cold air Canada can supply, and it could supply just enough. That and some upper air dynamics come in play. So I'm still thinking that the 6th, 7th time frame, if there's a second low behind this, that might be the better, the one that might have the better chance to produce some snow. There is a way that this first system could become more problematic. Again, it would have to be that the block flexes its muscles faster and that the surface low doesn't run up toward the Great Lakes, maybe winds up being further south so that you could have the coastal development further south and more of that high pressing in. But remember, it's a delicate balance. If the block really goes nuts, it could suppress everything further south. So that doesn't seem to be likely at this point, given what the models are showing. But I don't want to necessarily take everything off the table because the way models been handling the extreme nature of the atmosphere this winter has not been good. Take a look at these teleconnections, which are crazy. I mean, you still have this off-the-wall PNA, which is forecast to actually remain off the wall into the end of next week before it rapidly rises to that neutral line and goes slightly positive around that March 5th, 6th, 7th time frame. And look at the North Atlantic Oscillation, the NAO, almost down to a over a minus 500 reading here. And that bottoms out around March 2nd. So right with that first system, you've got this crashed NAO. It's at neutral today, and it accelerates rapidly negative. Even just between today and tomorrow, the NAO goes crazy negative. And then it goes really crazy negative when we go into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And the EPO, by the way, is just it's positive right now, which probably explains the lack of cold air in the east. And then we kind of straddle the neutral line. So the EPO is not cooperating here. If we had a strong negative EPO with all of this, I would certainly be think that there might be more cold air around to play with. But you know what? You are dealt the cards you are dealt, and you have to. You can't anticipate things that aren't there. And there's no real Arctic air that's coming into play here. So It's not going to suddenly magically appear. It doesn't work that way. Again, whenever you're dealing with weather and trying to figure out a forecast, you have to play with what's in front of you. Just like a good poker player has to play the hand he's dealt, and if he doesn't like it, he either bluffs his way or he folds. And more often than not, it's probably the wisest thing to do is to fold. Now, let's look at Europe here, because Europe is getting an impact from all of this, obviously, and they are being impacted now because of the fact that that blocking high is developing from Scandinavia to just west of England back to easternmost Greenland. And when we put the temperature anomalies up right here, we can follow the path of that cold air. This is the profile of temperatures at midnight tonight on the GFS. And you can see that cold air from Siberia just sweeping westward in through Monday, Tuesday. All of Europe, virtually all of Europe, except for southern Spain and Portugal, all either below normal or much below normal through a good chunk of this week. Now, this rise above normal that you see moving into southern France, that's in response to an ocean storm that's going to come into play and find its way up into the English Channel later next week. And that may enhance snow possibilities across all of England, Scotland, and Ireland. And we'll show you that on the surface map in a moment. But there's that cold air. And you start to see it modify now as we move into the week of March 5th to some degree, because at this point, the block is now shifted up over into Canada. So you don't really have the big blocking high anymore, driving Siberian cold air westward. This is going to be one big push that is underway. I meant to check it before. I just want to take a look at temperatures right now in Europe. Let me just take a look and see what we got. Okay, so right now, Athens is in Greece is at -1 Celsius. Let me just pull up a few more. Oh boy. Okay, so temperature in London right now is 35 Fahrenheit. Temperature in Glasgow, Scotland, is 32. This cold air hasn't quite reached there yet. Temperature, I'll just pull up a couple more. Let's go to Berlin. Berlin right now is 20. Rome is 45. It's pretty chilly for them. And one more, we'll pull up Paris. And Paris is 31. So the cold air is just beginning now to make its big sweep into Europe. And why don't we pull up the surface map here? Let's go back to the beginning, because there is going to be some snow. There we go. And we'll... Hello. Yes. Okay. So here we are tonight. Not much in terms of regular weather going on. It looks pretty. It's pretty quiet here at the moment. The isobars going east to west from Siberia on up in through Germany and through France and over England. So you can see that the surface winds are basically from the northeast and east, and that is a cold wind, and that just increases. Wind becomes more northeasterly as we go through Sunday and Monday. You start to see those North Sea streamers moving into England and Scotland. And here's where we have this low moving up west of France. You see it there. The model's tracking this further to the west on this run today. So the snow area is more into Ireland, western England, and gradually spreads its way up through England and into Scotland as we go through the end of the week. That's a pretty wrapped up little low center there that is going to impact the British Isles later on this week. So you snow lovers up there should have this may be your last gasp of the winter. So if it is, I would strongly urge that you enjoy it. And as far as Canada is concerned with all of this, with this block that is going to be developing, I'm going to move this backwards and get back to the first part of this week, this coming week. So your Great Lakes storm is way up to the northwest, and there's a coastal low that develops here east of Nova Scotia on Monday and brings some snow to Newfoundland, it looks like. And then you see the impact of the block as everything starts moving from east to west. This is because all the low centers now and the jet stream is so far south that the flow is basically from east to west from Greenland. And so everything is moving back westward to a large degree. So you're getting your weather coming in from the northeast. Now, as that coastal low gets going, it looks like, at least at the moment, that it would be too far south for any real impact, for kind of a glancing impact for Nova Scotia, and passes well to the south of Newfoundland late this week. That is actually that is the second system. The first system you can't even find. Okay. I'll just go back. This is for Friday and Saturday. The first system is so far south and east, it doesn't come anywhere close. It's the second system for March 5th and 6th that it affects the east, would impact Nova Scotia and just clip Newfoundland on the 6th and 7th, or the 7th and 8th, depending on the timing. At that point, it's a pretty wrapped up animal well east of Newfoundland by the time we get to March 9th. So you see the impact there with regards to the block. So again, the big thing here with respect to what's going to happen this week and any potential nor'easter on the East Coast, I'll bring up the surface map on how I drew it. And this is really the illustration of what happens when the primary low gets too far to the north. Your secondary low is too far to the north. So really, if the GFS is right, the bulk of this precip would be rain for much of the northeast and even up into the easternmost Great Lakes, back over through Michigan. You have to go up into northern Michigan and back through Wisconsin, north and west of the primary low, to find some snow. And then as that primary low collapses and the secondary low takes over, some areas in upstate New York and interior New England will change over to snow as cold air begins to bleed down. But all of this is happening too far north for places like southern New England, for places like New York City, Long Island, New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania. If you get that primary, if instead of being where the model has it here in southern Michigan, it's down, say, near Cincinnati, so that you get your secondary low to really get going off the Virginia, North Carolina coast, then we have a bit of a different ball game. But you're going to have that block really come and flex its muscles a lot sooner than what weather models are indicating at the moment. So it's, again, pretty interesting time that we are dealing with here. Let me see. Where did I hide myself? There we go. Bring myself up full screen. Okay, so why don't we come back? I'll come back to the board here, and we'll talk for a little bit. Let's widen me out. A little slow on the uptake at the moment. I'm kind of tired from a long day. Daniello, even though March is in meteorological spring, which is correct, chances for a snowstorm, yes, but you are going to see, you got to still have a perfect setup in order for this to happen. Dynamic cooling, Tom Adams, close to the low center, fringe gets rain. Yeah, that's actually quite true. I've seen that happen before as well. This time of year, you start to get the atmosphere is starting to warm, so unless you got some really solid cold air in play, that's how that oftentimes is how it plays out. Let's see. Let's see. Always smiling. Snow in April when your baby girl was born. That's wonderful. Yeah, it does snow in April every once in a while. Again, only with perfect setups, though. I'm going to roll down here. Jason Schaefer. You're hoping that happens. Bring on the block. Yeah, I tell everybody on my Facebook page when, people get excited over this sort of stuff, and I kind of understand it. They hear the word block, and, there's visions of snowflakes dancing through their heads. And I have reminded everyone that the blocking you want, and the pattern you want, and the pattern change you want, and the pattern change you get, most often are two different things. Okay, so that there's no magic bullet. Just because you have the blocking signature and the negative NAO and all the rest of it, you could have it from now until doomsday. But if those troughs and ridges are not in the right place, and if the timing is all wrong, you're not going to get anything of consequence out of it. Thanks, Nick Cortese, for hitting Super Chat tonight. I really appreciate it very much. Thank you. 99 Wolves. I'm sorry. So you're hoping for it to push the cup race? I lost your comment here. Hang on. Where'd you go? What race is that? I'm kind of curious. So I lost the comment. Princess Lee 30 is in Nashville, and it gets scary. Well, you're getting some nasty weather there across Tennessee. And Anne-Marie Passaretti, good to see you here. Don't get too excited over the possibility of some snow on Long Island unless we get some model changes here in the next couple of runs. Not saying it can't happen, but right now, from what I'm looking at, a lot of chess pieces have to get moved around into a few different places. Joe DeLizio, good to see you here, buddy. Hope everything is going well. Shoot me a message a little later on, and we'll talk for a bit. How's the euro looking? I know it's going to be bad. The Met Office said we were going to get half a meter in the coming days. The European, I don't have a precip view of the European for Europe, but I was looking at the surface and upper air view. It matches up pretty well with what the GFS has been telegraphing and what the Canadian model has been telegraphing. So, I would kind of go along with what they're forecasting at this point. Chris Alley, good to see you here too tonight. Hope you're doing well. Everything okay on my end. Worst weather you've had since 1983 in Ireland. Wow, it's been quite the winter there for you, huh? I'm learning little by little how these weather patterns are playing out across Europe. I've been watching some of these model runs where you get these lows and they move in all sorts of crazy directions, which just kind of astounded me. I got to tip my hat to the forecasters there. They have a really tough job. I thought it was hard where I am, but I was watching some of these storms. They move in all sorts of directions, and there was a little low on one of the model runs that formed up near Norway and then moved west-southwestward over England and Ireland. A tiny little low, but it was there. It was like, boy, how do you forecast this sort of stuff? Nick Cortese, you're looking for an F3 or F4 tornado. You really don't want one, okay? All right? And you're not going to get one on Long Island, at least. Timothy Veltman, I'm just trying to get all your comments here. Dynamic cooling. That's another thing that you're going to have to play a role in here. You have a very, very cold feature in the upper layers of the atmosphere that is going to be involved. A very strong upper low. In fact, I just didn't do the upper air pattern, so I'll bring the GFS back up again. Let's do that. Let me bring this up. Oh, I'm sorry. I got the wrong. I got to bring that one up first. There we go. So you can at least see how the whole upper air jet stream pattern evolves. It's actually quite, it's really interesting to see just the huge radical change that occurs in the whole flavor of the upper atmosphere. There we go. Oh boy, sorry folks, just a little bit slow on the uptake tonight. Kind of tired. So I'll bring it back. Actually, I'll bring it back to a couple of days ago. There's your big ridge in the east, deep trough in the west. You can't really see the blocking high because it's off the top of the screen here. But there's your block starts to push in right here. This is Monday. And you can see how the whole profile in the eastern United States just changes. And now your block is there. So you see this, there's system. This is the system for the end of next week. You know, a wrapped up upper air storm. You got to get that to track in the right place. And if it's got to be a little bit further to the south than where it is. The colder air that the block would allow to bleed down into New England and into the Northeast, it's just not far enough south yet. That comes into play when that second upper air system, and you can see how that one actually kind of pivots in a northeast-southwest fashion as it starts to get kicked along. At this point, the blocking high is breaking down, and you still have higher than normal pressures to the north, but the blocking high is gone by the end of the forecast period. Doesn't mean it's right. Models sometimes like to break things down a lot faster with these blocks that actually happen. So, you want to be careful with that. And the ensembles may not be on the same page as the operational. But you can see how this is all, amazing, really, when you think about it. You've got you had a ridge along the East Coast that was one of the strongest ever observed, if not the strongest ever observed for any time during the months of February, March, or even April. And you now have this block that's developed that might be one of the strongest upper air highs that is developed in the Northeast Atlantic that's migrating westward. That's ever been observed at this time of year. So we're seeing some really wild dynamics playing out in the atmosphere that we just don't, this stuff doesn't happen every day. Okay, so look, folks, let's call it a day. I hope everybody's had a great Saturday. Keep it tuned here. We'll be on at some point during the day on Sunday. We'll touch upon. I'm toying with the idea tomorrow morning of doing a live stream just to focus on the weather in Europe, and then do a separate one for us, my normal live stream later in the day when all the other models are out. So I might be on tomorrow morning if I have the energy for it. So stay tuned for that. I'll put it up tomorrow morning when I get up. I'll schedule something here on the YouTube channel so we can so everybody can be in sync. In the meantime, if you're traveling around tonight, be safe in your travels. If the weather where you are is a bit adverse, stay warm if you are across the pond. And you can check out more on all of this. I wrote a couple of good posts tonight. Well, I think they're good. But I wrote a couple of posts tonight on the short range and the long range on the website, meteorologistjoecioffi.com. And, of course, there's much more on my Facebook page. You can link to all of that right here from the banner at the top of my YouTube channel. Have a great night, folks. We'll see you on Sunday.